So I live in northwestern Montana, a population of, I can't get a solid number from anybody, but the Flathead Valley is somewhere between 30 to 50,000 in the wintertime. And what you were saying is exactly correct. My high school age daughter could probably locate
Mm.
fentanyl faster than a DEA undercover agent up here with her phone alone.
Yep.
It's consumer facing. It's right there. And like you said, I would have known where to get heroin, let alone the other accoutrements that go with injecting heroin. Two, I'm scared of needles, so I would want
Yep.
no part of that whatsoever. And now the barrier to entry has been removed down to essentially a tic tac.
That's it.
Something. Yeah. I
Right.
don't know. I agree with you. I almost think, with my own children, I have a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 15-year-old. I do the best I can to maintain open and honest
You
communication
have
with
to.
them, try to
Yeah.
educate, try to keep the dialogue open, to try to warn them about what they may think is not dangerous and the risk that it may show. Unfortunately, I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement, and up here, like you mentioned, methamphetamine,
Yeah.
huge problem. The more
Yeah.
rural it gets here in Montana, and that leads to a life, this is their words, not mine, a life of crime, largely stealing to trade upstream for the drugs because they
Yeah.
run out of money and they'll do anything they can to get their fix. And it becomes this revolving door. They call them repeat customers. They're dealing
Yep.
with same people every single day, every single shift.
Yeah. It's it's I don't know. There's never been like as much harm as there is right now. Yeah, and the other part of it for teenagers and parents, I think, without getting, you know, too much off track, is mental health. I
Mhm.
think the story, like, unfortunately, I'm to the point where like someone could tell me the age of a victim and like some general circumstances, and I could tell probably exactly what the drug was and what it was made to look like. And a lot of times with kids, it's fake Xanax pills. And they're like, you tell me a child died in his house, in his bedroom at night. It's a fake Xanax pill that contained fentanyl. And here's the reason why, because there's mental health challenges today, of course, with teenagers. Again, we've become a society that's pretty accepting of, hey, take a pill to feel better. Perhaps they took a real Xanax prescription before, or perhaps a friend took it, or someone in their household took it. Someone tells them, hey, this Xanax will make you feel better. It'll help you sleep. It'll help you deal with this issue. But they don't want to talk to a trusted adult or a parent about going to a doctor. And, it's easier just to go online, and they'll go
Right.
on social media. They'll buy a Xanax, and it's like, Andy, right now, and people always ask me like, well, how can you say that? That can't be true. You don't know what you're talking about.
It's true.
100% of the pills that are sold on social media or on the street are fake, right? They're not real prescription pills, 100% of them. And people ask me, like I said, how do you know that? Here's all I can say. At DEA, the agents bought pills every single day undercover, thousands of them. Every week, every month, they were seizing close to 1 million pills just in the LA office, right? These pills go to a laboratory, they get tested. That's the lab results. So I don't know what to tell people. Like, you need to go, if you're going to make a decision to use a pill that you purchased on social media or on the street, that's fine. But just know that like your baseline for risk mitigation should be that's fentanyl. And then make your decision based on knowing it's fentanyl. Because if it's a pill now and you got it on social media, it is fake. It's just too much of a money maker for these drug cartels, something that they can make for a dime that a legitimate pharmaceutical pill is going to cost $20.
Yeah. Bill, let's keep scaring the shit out of parents. Tell
Yeah.
me about tranq,
Oh my
which is a
God.
term
Yeah.
I haven't heard until I was prepping for this episode.
Yeah. So here's what's fascinating about tranq is, and a lot of times people miss the mark. They're like, hey, we need to come up with a test that people can test their drugs to make sure tranq's not in it. Andy, people suffering from opiate use disorder, they want tranq. They want xylazine in their drug. Just to be clear to everybody, here's why. The traditional opiate high that we talked about earlier, like we talked about pills and you talked about tar, heroin.
Yep.
The high from that drug has a specific profile, right? It's gonna hit you a certain way, it's gonna last a certain amount of time, and you're gonna feel a very specific way from that high. The opiate user, someone who's addicted to opiates, they don't want to veer too far from that. And fentanyl is a different drug, dude. Like it'll hit you so much harder, so much quicker. You're going to need to use it. Whereas, you know, I've heard people say like, and this likely I talked to addiction medicine specialists and they're like, Bill, just so you know, that's not true. That was just this user's perception. The people will say, hey, when I was on heroin, I could live, like I could live and I could function. When I was on heroin, I could function. When I started taking fentanyl, I lost the ability to do that. I couldn't hold a job anymore or whatever. So the point I'm making is that the high profile from fentanyl is different. It's much faster acting. It's much shorter lasting. So what did the chemists do? They started mixing xylazine with it, an animal tranquilizer. Significant points about it. It's not approved for any medical use in humans in the United States. Also, it's not a controlled substance. So right now, at least federally. So right now, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration has no authority to arrest someone for trafficking in xylazine. Someone trafficking xylazine won't be prosecuted. Some states do have their own laws, but it's kind of a strange situation. So they put that in with xylazine to change the high profile. So now you're going to get something that's a little more akin to that heroin high that you might be looking for, but you can't find heroin on the street anymore, or that oxycodone high that you're looking for. So it's going to string out that high and make you feel doped up for longer. It's not an opiate, so Narcan or naloxone will have no effect on mitigating the respiratory suppression or anything like that. That's the reason why xylazine's out there. Xylazine's out there because people want that high for longer. They don't necessarily want fentanyl. And that's, you know, an important point is it's a supply determined market, right? What I mean by that is you might want oxycodone, you might want heroin, but the drug dealers and ultimately the drug cartels in Mexico, they are the ones that are going to determine what drugs we have social issues with here in the United States. And they're going to determine what drugs are supplied here. And those are, you know, right now that's fentanyl. So they've done something to fentanyl to make it, let's just say, to make it more heroin-like.
Well, I mean, that is, there's obviously either smarter or crazier people than me messing with that chemistry behind the scenes. It makes total sense that the cartels are determining the end user's choices for sure. Do you remember the first time that you saw or encountered the xylazine mixed with the fentanyl?
So, okay, xylazine mixed with fentanyl. I mean, it's probably 2019, maybe 2019, around
Okay.
4 to 5 years ago, I would say. I mean, hey, there's a little bit of it. There's been a little bit of it in pills. You know, most of the pills are pressed in Mexico. When you see fake pills in the street, most of them are pressed in Mexico. Yes, there are some people that now buy powder from Mexico and press their own pills. But even in pills pressed in Mexico, we saw a little bit of xylazine in it, and we see a little bit in it to try to get that same high profile that you would see from oxycodone. It's been around. It's for sure been around for a while.
Yeah, and I've done quite a few episodes with people who have worked specifically on targeting the cartels south of the border. And I don't know what to describe it other than an open secret that, you know, most of the precursor chemicals, if not all of them, are coming from China. They get delivered to the ports in Mexico. And do you think that the xylazine is a part of those precursor chemical, or are they adding that in Mexico? Are the cartels mix? I mean, because, you know, they take the chemicals like you said, pressing them. Is it the cartel making that decision, or is that just now part of the recipe coming from China?
So two things. First is when it's mixed with powder, what I've seen is most of the time it's done by the local, almost like retail dealer in the United States. Take Kensington in Philadelphia. You know, that's a real hardcore open air fentanyl tranq market in Philadelphia right now, probably the worst in the country. Probably those dealers are ordering it online, powder from China. They're ordering xylazine powder online from China, having it shipped to them, and then mixing it with the fentanyl that they're getting from Mexico and putting that drug out on the street in powdered form. Is it being mixed in Mexico with fentanyl? Yes, it is. I've seen it in pills. I don't know that I saw it in mixed with powder coming across the border, but it was mixed with pills to some extent in Mexico. And you talked about the precursors coming from China, and that's such an important part of this. And it goes to, it can be a complicated topic, and I could do my best to explain. Hey, I have a New Jersey public school education, so I may not be the best at explaining this, but here's why one of the primary reasons there was a huge influx of synthetic drugs beginning right around 2016. What happened at that time? There was, if you remember, there was a lot of rhetoric, like with the presidential race. There was talk about trade sanctions against China, economic war with China. China had already devalued their currency twice, if I'm not mistaken, twice or more, and they did it once, maybe in 2015, 2016. So there was fear in China of currency devaluation. What do the wealthy people in China want to do at that point? They want to get their money out of the country. There's very strict capital flight restrictions in China. Now, who has money in China? This is where I was naive, because at one point I went to a DEA guy who was working in China, and I said, hey, this is something the Chinese government should partner with us on. Like, they want to stop capital flight. There's people moving millions of dollars out of the country. Aren't they going to want to join us and catch these people? And he said to me, Bill, who has the money in China? And then it dawned on me, like, the Communist Party members have the money in China. So the reality is, when I say that the Communist Party is moving money out of China and into the United States in the form of untraceable cash, like, that's really what I mean. But here's how it works. And there's really interesting economic evidence to back up, like, to what scale this is happening. So this is what I call, like, the Chinese capital flight model of money laundering. A drug cartel in Mexico orders $1 million worth of precursor chemicals from China. So there's a money broker in China, and he says, who wants to get $1 million out of China into the United States, have it delivered in cash in the United States, untraceable, to forward or push whatever agenda you want? And some of the reasons are legitimate, college education, buying a car for your kid in college. Some of the things that I've seen, a little bit scary. But here's what happens. Someone in China, a Chinese national, pays that $1 million for those chemicals. The chemicals, and now the drug cartel owes that Chinese person $1 million, right? They just paid for this chemical shipment. Chemicals go to Mexico, fentanyl's made, it's shipped to the United States, it's sold. There's $1 million now in cash in the United States. And the drug trafficker says, oh yeah, I owe this $1 million to that person in China. Let me call them and see what they want me to do with it. So the Chinese national says, deliver it to Bill Bodner in Redondo Beach, California. And there goes a suitcase to Bill Bodner. And now the Communist Party has just used the drug trade to get $1 million out of China into the United States in the form of untraceable cash. There was a great story, I think it was NBC News did on this, where they got a quote from the Treasury Department that the United States Treasury Department said the money disappears into thin air, like they have no idea what happens to it. And if you look at the quantity of money that's come out of China via capital flight, I mean, the last numbers I saw, like, for last year were like $68 billion or something like that. Now, obviously, all of that is not precursor chemicals. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you could almost see, like, a pressure feed, a pressurized force on the system, where the more Chinese individuals, or the more the Chinese government wanted to accomplish capital flight, the more they would probably push these precursor chemical sales to the drug cartels, the more synthetic drugs made, meth and fentanyl, and the more they were sold in the United States. And like I said, that's one big reason why. And is that part of their 2045 plan? I don't know, but it's definitely a way that they've used the drug trade to accumulate a huge amount of wealth in the United States that who knows what they're doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's anybody's guess as to whether or not it's part of that 2045 plan. But if I put on my planning hat and I would step into the role and make the United States the adversary and put myself in their position, those are absolutely the steps that I would take, whether it be, there's a social media aspect to that as well, too. And I'm by no means an expert on the ability to manipulate social media or pulling this, but driving division, undermining the foundation of this society. I mean, I don't even understand $1 billion, right? It's conceptual to me. 1,000 million. That's a lot of briefcases. You know, you multiply that by 68. So yeah, those are the things that I would do in a society that values time and planning and generational movements over the instantaneous, you know, short attention span of the society that we seem to live in right now. That is exactly what I would do.